Okay, thanks for your patience. I don't know if everybody's still here. I had to reboot the computer. I don't know what was going on. The YouTube um, showed a spinning wheel. It was trying to connect and it wasn't connecting. So, anyways, we're here now. So we'll just jump right in. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. I've just got to get something up on the back on the screen here. What we're um, what we're dealing with today are the so-called 10 corruptions of insight. We're going through the stages of insight according to the uh, excellent presentation by Mahasi Sayadaw. This is not an invention of his. It can be found in the Visuddhimagga, and the core of it is actually found in the Majjhima Nikaya. And what we've gone through so far is we've gotten the hypothetical meditator to the stage where he's beginning to get some valid insights. His noticing has become better. He's seeing the arising and ceasing of objects, and this has led him to understand through direct experience um, two important truths: the dependent origination, in the sense, not in the detailed sense, but in the sense of seeing that everything arises according to cause and condition and not otherwise. So he sees things are not random. That when something arises, this is a cause for something else to arise. And it's also a cause for consciousness to alight upon it. And he has seen to some degree, at any rate, he has seen the nature of the objects, the dhammas, as being imbued with the three characteristics of suffering, impermanence, and not self. So we have the meditator now making some good progress, and at this stage, in the normal course of events, he will encounter a set of distractions that are called the 10 corruptions of insight. Now these, and I'll go through them. There's a list in the Mahasi's book, taken from originally they were listed in the Patisambhidamagga, which is a canonical text, a late text, but it's part of the canon. These are phenomena that arise in the mind, and they're called corruptions only because if one attaches to them or misinterprets them, then the insight, the vipassana, is corrupted and the meditator goes astray. In themselves, they are actually a good sign. The meditator would not have these phenomena occurring if he did not have good, solid mindfulness at this juncture. So it's a sign that the meditation is progressing properly, but it leads many meditators astray. All of these corruptions are in themselves, or mostly they are in themselves. There's a list which I will go through now. That's what I wanted to get up on the screen because I won't have these to heart. The first one, probably the most significant in experience is the seeing of a brilliant light. And this can occur differently for different people. For some people, it's an overwhelming kind of bright white light. For other people, it's a kind of a gentle glow, or a glowing a nimitta of a glowing object like a star or a sun. And this, together with the other corruptions, uh, one of the dangers here is that many meditators will believe that they have reached nibbana at this point. It's a false enlightenment. They have these phenomena arise, and they can arise quite strongly, and the person is convinced that it's stream entry. And this is a fairly common misconception, and it can sometimes I've encountered it with people, and it's sometimes hard to convince them this is not the real thing. All that glitters is not gold, and there are many experiences that can arise in meditation, and it's very easy to be mistaken. I'll return to this point later. I want to go through this list of 10, but I'll return to this point of a false enlightenment towards the end of this talk. The second one listed is strong mindfulness. The meditator, and this is, as many of these so-called corruptions, they are in themselves nothing wrong with them. They're actually positive, but the person attaches to it or misinterprets it, then it causes trouble. So the meditation feels like it's going really well. The person feels like they're extremely mindful, and they're practicing properly. And the next one is called knowledge. The person begins to really feel that they understand the three characteristics in particular. A strong faith arises in the person. The quality of saddha becomes very strong, and one of the ways this manifests is that the person will, and Mahasi mentions this, and I've seen it myself, the person will feel now the person will feel now an impulse or a strong desire to go out into the world and preach the Dhamma, and everyone should know about this. This is so wonderful. I need to tell my family and friends all about it. Overflowing with this kind of enthusiasm. Piti, or rapture. Now, this is one of the jhana factors, and it can arise in at this time, which also is very pleasant, and it brings the meditator to feel that they really accomplished something at this point, and they feel the various manifestations of rapture. This can occur in different ways, and it is intrinsically a mental factor, a feeling of upswelling joy, but it has a side effect or resultant effect in the body. One can feel sensations like goosebumps or spine rushes and so forth. The feeling of tranquility arises. The person feels really at peace. Happiness or sukha arises. The person feels very joyous, uh, and this can give way to equanimity, where the person feels very centered and calm and collected. Um, then the last one of the 10 is an attachment, and this is the one that's unmistakably a corruption, that the person feels attached to these experiences, and this is where the problem arises. So the proper practice at this point is to simply be aware of these phenomena arising and notice them with vipassana as objects and not be attached to them. Take them just as mental phenomena, which is what they are. If the person, the meditator, becomes attached or excited about these kinds of phenomena, then uh, they can persist for a long time. And the person basically is stuck at that stage, even if they don't mistake it for awakening or enlightenment. But the case sometimes occurs that the person thinks this is it, this is enlightenment, and it's not. There's still a ways to go, um, but it is. They are in themselves good signs. They're indications that the meditation has progressed well to this stage, and the mind is, because of its focus, it gets some, um, as together with the mindfulness, it's developed some samadhi, and you get these various occurrences or phenomena that are jhana-like in nature, such as the piti and the feeling of happiness, and the nimitta of the bright light. These are all jhana-like symptoms, and in Vipassana, we're not really trying to enter jhana. Now, as I said, the meditator will sometimes mistake this for enlightenment. Mistake this for enlightenment, and if he's working with a teacher, it's incumbent upon the teacher to explain to him that it's not. That he has to keep going. But if the person's on their own, they may often be led astray this way. They'll eventually come to the realization, no, that nothing's really changed in my depth. This is not stream entry, but it can be because of the intensity of the experience. For some people, it really feels like something as important has happened. Now, and I've given talks on this topic before, so I'll be kind of brief. But the traditional way, if someone thinks they've attained to stream entry, the traditional way to check that is to examine the mind, not just lightly or once, but again and again, with some persistence. Examine the mind for the presence of the first 3 fetters. There's a list of 10 fetters, samyojana, that are overcome by the different stages of enlightenment. And the first 3 are overcome by stream entry. And when I say overcome, it means they're completely gone. They're eliminated. They don't arise in the mind stream anymore. These first 3 fetters all have some relation to view or ditthi. This is why stream entry is sometimes called the opening of the Dhamma eye, because the chief characteristic of stream entry is purification of view. So I'll just very briefly describe these three fetters, because this is an important information to know, so you can do a self-test if you think you have attained. Um, the fetters, you'll see them in English as personality view, rites and rituals clinging, and skeptical doubt. Now, all of these translations are very loose, and as often in the Dhamma, please don't rely on a literal interpretation of the English translations, because that can lead you astray if you over rely on that. Sakaya Ditti, the first one, which is the standard translation, is personality view. The literal meaning would be own body view. Sa Kaya, the own body. And the body here does not necessarily mean the physical body, but it means the mental body as well. This is a cognitive belief in a self. There are deeper levels of self-making that are not overcome by the stream winner, but the level of self-making that relies upon a view of self is overcome here. So the stream winner can no longer believe in a self, can no longer see that as a valid concept. The analogy I like to use is it's like an adult, educated adult person can no longer believe in Santa Claus. They can imagine Santa Claus, they can talk about Santa Claus, but there's no way they can actually believe in it. It's a concept that the mind will just reject. The second one is Silabata Paramasa, which is translated very loosely as rite and ritual clinging. And this is really, it's a kind of a magical or superstitious way of thinking, and primarily it relates to the practice, that one has the view that the practice is some kind of mechanical process, that one just does A, B, C, and D, and then it will happen, rather than understanding the spontaneity of it. This is a subtle concept, and if you are serious about understanding it, you should look it up and try and read up on it. And the third one is Wicikitcha, which is uncertainty or skeptical doubt. So that the mind that has skeptical doubt, or Wicikitcha, is a mind that wavers. It's important to distinguish between this kind of doubt, and this is again where the English words are inadequate, between this type of doubt and what could be called the sort of doubt that manifests as an open mind. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the mind that wants or craves certainty and fluctuates and wavers. Maybe this, maybe that. With the stream winner, one of the characteristics of a stream winner that's signified by the overcoming of this fetter is unshakable faith in the Buddha's teachings, because the stream winner has verified for himself or herself the reality of the unconditioned. Now, this is the essence, the real meaning of stream entry, is a brief glimpse of nibbana. So that faith is absolutely solid because it's based on experience. Prior to stream entry, the only way to approach nibbana is with faith. We cannot reason about it, and we cannot experience. We have no experience of it. So it's really the only aspect of the teaching that needs to be taken on faith. But after stream entry, then that is no longer just faith. It's now a solid certainty, because it has been glimpsed. It's like the mind says, oh, there is an unconditioned, there is something else. Without at that point fully understanding it, that comes later. So uh, we can see that these 10 corruptions that we went through are uh, pretty much all pleasant experiences. It feels like the meditation is really going well, and together with the light, if that occurs in any kind of noticeable way, this leads people to think that this is enlightenment. But uh, it doesn't change the situation of the fetters. It doesn't do any significant turning about in the depth. It's just it's just a set of phenomena, just a set of experiences. And the proper way to approach them, if they occur in meditation, is just to take them as any other object. This is just a mental phenomena, and notice it, observe it as an object. Observe the joy as an object. Observe the upswelling of faith as an object. See them as mental phenomena only. Don't be attached to them. Don't cling to them. Don't overvalue them. Don't see them as something more than they are. Yeah, they're just phenomena that arise at a certain stage of meditation. And at the best, we can say that they are a sign that the meditation has progressed properly to this stage. And this is a point where many meditators stumble, they become attached, or they mistake it for enlightenment. But it's just a passing phenomena, and it varies in intensity for people, and it varies in duration, and it'll last longer if you attach to it, become kind of wallow in it and enjoy it. Then you can get stuck here. So that's the 10 corruptions, and next week we'll go on to what comes after that, when one's gone through the other side of that, which many teachers say that the meditation only really begins after one's passed through the corruptions and come out the other side. So we'll leave that for next week, and I'll take questions from the chat at this point. Let's see what we got here. Okay, what is Chula Sotapanna, or minor stream entry? That's next week. That's I'll deal with that next week. That's what some commentators call the experience after passing through the and transcending the corruptions. Is the cause of the exterior salayatana arising, for example, forms, etc., previous intentions? Is this correct understanding? It is, I would say, a partially true statement. In case anyone doesn't understand, what the questioner is asking about is when he talks about the exterior salayatana, he's talking about the objects of sense. So the things that we see, hear, smell, taste, and so forth in the world, or external objects that we sense. The question of causation is a complex one, and we should avoid falling into the error of reducing everything to one cause. Now, the Buddha said that he listed as one of the false views the idea that everything is karma. But karma is one of the causes for our sense experience. First of all, the fact that we have these particular sense organs is a result of karma. But also the particular objects that are presented to us. One of the causes will be your past karma, which is what the questioner calls your past intentions. So you make karma with your intentions. But there are also purely external causes, purely natural causes. And an example would be if you see a beautiful sunset, that would be classed as a pleasant visual object. The role of karma here is that you were karmically you had acquired the karma to experience that sunset, so you were in the right place at the right time, and you were mentally prepared or motivated to look at it. But the sunset itself has nothing to do with your karma as an objective factor. It's to do with the atmosphere and the movement of the sun and so on. So karma is one of the causes of our experience, but it doesn't work alone. It has to be in conjunction with external or natural causes. Okay, I'll take another question. So are those only considered corruptions purely and only because they may delude the meditator to thinking they have obtained the fruit and as opposed to path? Yes, yeah, they are. And we'll get to this definitions of path and fruit, whichever particular meaning in Abhidhamma. We'll get to that later. But these are considered corruptions only based on the attitude of the meditator towards them. In themselves, they're neutral phenomena. And they would not occur if the meditator had not made some progress. So the one can mistake them for enlightenment, and that's a corruption, or a lesser kind of corruption is just attaching to them and enjoying them and not moving on, not taking an objective view of them. People get stuck in making good karma, but we need to understand that nibbana is neither making karma nor not making it. Yes, there's a list in, I think it's in the Anguttara, but I'm not sure. But there's a list of 4 kinds of karma: bright karma with bright results, dark karma with dark results, mixed karma, both bright and dark, and the karma that leads beyond karma. So practicing for nibbana, because nibbana is actually neither cause nor effect. So it's really outside the realm of karma altogether. Are these corruptions of phenomena stemming from some degree of ekagata during the meditation? Yeah, I would say that ekagata, which is the singularity of mind or unity of mind, I would say that, yeah, there, or more generally, some degree of samadhi. That samadhi is required to as a mental factor to make any progress, and the deepening or intensification of the samadhi can lead to these kind of mental phenomena, like the arising of nimittas. And if one takes an over interest in that, then it becomes a corruption. Do we know anything about the meditation practices in other schools like Sarvastivada or any of the other ancient schools? I think very little in detail, because meditation practices generally are things that are taught verbally and not so much written down. Now, we would not really have any good idea of meditation practice if all we had to rely on was the Pali Suttas. There isn't really detailed meditation instruction in the suttas. So meditation is more like a living tradition passed from teacher to student. It's not it's only really in modern times that there's been a tendency to write out, like Mahasi Sayadaw's books, for example, that we're using here, to really write things out in detail in terms of meditation. See. Scientific community thinks there's no free will, citing some experience. What the Buddha said regarding free will. Well, the question of free will or determinism, to some it's to some degree, it's a debate that in Western terms it revolves around the idea of an ego or a self or an agent making a free choice or not. So in the way the debate is framed in Western philosophy, it doesn't really apply to Buddhism, but in another sense, it does. There was a debate in the Buddhist time about determinism, and that was one of the heretical schools that the Buddha criticized. Was the school of Makali Gosala, who taught that everything is determined and we're just living out a script. We're not really making any choices. The Buddha denied that, and there is in the Abhidhamma analysis of the workings of the mind, there is room for what we would call free will in the jhana moments. These are the moments when karma is made. It's cited that this is part of the sequence of states that the mind goes through when it cognizes an object, and the stage of jhana is only reached when if the mindfulness is strong at that moment. So I think one way of interpreting that or understanding that is that we do have the potential of free will, but most of the time we don't use it. We just follow along the path of least resistance and go along by habit. This is not really the same thing as determinism, but we do have the option or the potential of doing something different, making a choice. And this is the operation of the mental factor of cetana, is intention. But it becomes confused if you are working from a self view. There is a intention, there is a free will, but there's no agent making that choice. There's just an operation of a free mental factor. Sometimes my friends who meditate says he sees lights almost like sparks randomly. What could that be? That's just a nimitta. I think whether you're doing vipassana or samatha, you might see lights of various kinds, and it's best not to make too much of a big deal of it. It's just a phenomenon. It's just the mind creates these things, and it comes from some degree of samadhi. When the mind has good samadhi, it will naturally create nimittas. It will create objects of visual, usually visual, could be auditory too. Some people they hear things. It's a kind of a faculty to not to get attached to them, or not to try and look for hidden meanings in them. In Ajahn Mun's biography by Ajahn Mahabua, he wrote The Life of Ajahn Mun. He talks about Ajahn Mun, and early on in his practice, he was getting very elaborate nimittas, and they were all kind of Buddhist religious symbols. Like you would see stupas and dhamma wheels and processions of monks and so on. and he was, for a long time he was lost in it because he found it so beautiful and inspiring. But then at some point he just realized it's a mental phenomenon. There's no significance, and he carried on, and they ceased. Next question: does the loss of personality view the mind never gets fully engaged again without some awareness present? Um, Not exactly, uh, because the stream winner is still subject to other defilements like greed and ill will, um, and even confusion, and there can be uh, degrees of mindfulness from time to time, lesser or greater. Uh, but what it means is the mind can never fall into a completely false view again. Although it can never uh, hold to either eternalism or annihilationism. The unreality of the self has been understood on a deep level. Next one: is it better to spread meditation through the day, 1 hour intervals, or should I meditate many hours a day, once a day for many hours? Which is better in your experience? Um, I think there's some advantages and disadvantages to both, but I would, in general, think it would be better to have one longer session, um, but to break it up with walking and sitting. I think there's something to be gained by a period of continuity that one can get deeper. Um, an advantage of doing it in shorter intervals throughout the day is that then uh, you never get too far away from that state of mind. So there is some advantage to that too. You might want to experiment with both and see which one seems to give you the better results. After 30 years in the robes, can you say that the underlying tendencies of anger and desire is not found in you? No comment, because that would be telling tales out of school. Does the Thai forest approach of resting in the chitta produce a different result to this Vipassana approach, or is it just a different route to the same goal? Yeah, that's an excellent question. Um, and I would take the position that it's a different route to the same goal. And it's not even so much a different route, but a different way of explaining the same thing. You see, the Burmese approach that we're mostly talking about in this series is uh, always given in terms of the object of consciousness, that you're trying to notice clearly the object of consciousness, whereas the Thai approach focuses on the subjective side, like to try to be centered in the knowing. But if you do either one of those, the other one naturally occurs. If you're being clearly aware of the objects of consciousness, the only way you can do that is if you're strongly centered in the knowing. And that if you start from that position and try to center yourself in the knowing, then the objects become automatically clear. So it's really two different ways of describing the same state of mind that we're trying to access. The Buddha says not to teach in Sanskrit verse, but Panani made classical Sanskrit of the Buddha's life. Does this mean the story was added later? Um, no, I don't. I don't think so. I think how it's generally understood, the Buddha's admonition not to teach in Sanskrit verse was not to reduce the Dhamma teaching to something that became what's the word? Sort of a secret, enigmatic teaching that um, one had to master a whole secret jargon before one could penetrate it. He wanted it to be known by the people, and taught in the common language. Um, so later Buddhist schools, not just Panini, but many later Buddhist schools wrote their scriptures down in Sanskrit. But it was a not the scholars call it the Buddhist hybrid Sanskrit. It wasn't the strict formal Sanskrit of the Vedas, which is really quite impenetrable without a lot of study. It was kind of I take it like the later use of Sanskrit was a skillful means in an India that was so linguistically diverse that to be able to have a common language that ordinary people with just a modest education could understand, much like the use of medieval Latin in Europe, which is different than classical Latin. Dinka asks, what is the most important thing that differentiate Mahasi method from other Vipassana practices? I think the particular feature of the Mahasi school is the practice of noting. So some people just call the noting method, to make a brief subliminal mental note, classifying the objects as they arise, to develop, which is a skillful means to develop precision of noting. And I think that's really the strength of the Mahasi method. That's sort of the particular power that it has, is it develops a precision in the mind that I think is missing from some other approaches. Next question. If a person no longer experiences any suffering, is this not the pure goal of achievement, no matter what it is called? Oh, the end of suffering is the goal of the path, but that's only occurs with the realization of the unconditioned. As long as the mind is stuck in the condition, there's going to be suffering. Okay, I'll take a couple more, and then we'll call it for today. Before his going forth, did the Buddha ask himself, why do people torment themselves? Read a Japanese manga about his life, and I'd heard that before. Is that a good question to ask oneself? I don't think I don't think I recall the Buddha actually saying precisely that. He was in the traditional story. He was more motivated by the idea of suffering in the abstract, particularly the existential suffering of birth, sickness, and death. Okay. Next question is, amazing thing in samsara is the major 6 schools of thoughts in Buddhist times. They got stuck only in one thing. The Buddha came and mixed everything and nothing, and nibbana is found. Okay, it's more of a comment. It's a good one. I read that, okay, this will be the last one I'll take. I read that the word meditation does not explain clearly what the Buddha meant by bhavana. Do you agree? Is meditation one thing and bhavana another? Okay, the first thing to note here is the Pali word that is translated as meditating, as the verb to meditate, is janeti, which means to do jhana, basically. Um, Bhavana has a broader meaning. Bhavana means development. Uh, so it's mental development, spiritual development in general, which would include meditation. So meditation would be part of bhavana, but bhavana more broadly is um, all the practice that we do, including ethics and moral practice, sila. We could say all of that is encompassed in the broadest sense under bhavana, and meditation is part of that. Very important part, but it's not the whole. So I'll leave it there, and I'm sorry that we were late getting started. I'm having a bit of issues with the computer. I just had to upgrade the operating system, and it's making things quirky and slow. So we'll uh, we'll try again next week, and hopefully things work a little smoother at the start. Okay, bye all.